welcome to this morning's edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Now, folks, let me tell you right off the bat, this is going to be a short edition because I'm scheduled to be on American Family Radio, substituting for Pastor Jeff Shreve at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, which means I've got about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more, to do this program. But I didn't want to just not do the program and leave you hanging. So I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about an important subject before I have to switch over. But I am planning to live stream my American Family Radio program. I'm substituting. I'm sub-hosting for Jeff Shreve. I do plan to live stream that so you can continue to watch it if you're watching on, well, I'm not so sure about Instagram because you won't be able to hear the calls on Instagram. But the rest of you should be able to hear both me and the callers. So we'll see how all of that works out. But for audio only, you can certainly go to afr.net. You can listen if you're in an area where there's an American Family Radio station in your area, or you can go to the podcast. You can go to the app. If you've got the app, you can go there and listen to it as well. That's why I've got the microphone sitting in front of me now, because I'm gearing up. I'm getting ready to go on the radio at 9 a.m. Okay. Let's get right to it, shall we? We are now down to 2 weeks from the election. 2 weeks. Of course, early voting's already started. I voted already. I trust you have too. But it is clear what the closing strategy is. The closing strategy is to paint Donald Trump as a monster. That's the closing strategy. Donald Trump is a fascist. Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump is a threat to our quote-unquote democracy. Donald Trump is going to arrest people and put them in jail who don't agree with him. Donald Trump is going to implement a fascist government. This stuff, folks, you know what we're witnessing? We are witnessing mass hysteria. We are witnessing mass mob mental illness. I'm serious. It's because Donald Trump had 4 years in office. We know what Donald Trump will do. He's already shown us what he will do. Donald Trump loves this country, loves the Constitution. Donald Trump has no aspirations whatsoever to be a dictator, to be a Hitler, to be a fascist. I mean, this stuff is utterly preposterous. It is over the top. But you know what? I think they actually believe it. I think these people are so brainwashed. I think they are so caught up in their cult bubble that they actually believe this stuff. I mean, and Carville said something which I thought was very interesting. He said in some comments, let me see if I can find that. Because, you know, we refer to our country, of course, accurately as a constitutional republic, because that's what we are. We are not a democracy. The father of our Constitution, James Madison, spoke specifically against democracy and said a republic, a constitutional republic, is what we were aiming for. Carville calls that highbrow. He says, quote, people say what's at stake is in this election, okay? The Constitution is at stake. The whole idea of, I don't know, if you call a constitutional republic, whatever highbrow people call it. So apparently you and I are highbrows for referring to our country as a constitutional republic. Well, and he doesn't mean that as a compliment. Can we call him a constitutional or historical ignoramus? Because that's what he is. We don't call it a constitutional republic because we're highbrow. We call it a constitutional republic because that's what the founding fathers designed. And the failure to understand that, of course, he's not in office, but there are many people in office who do not understand that, is to me political and governmental malpractice. because you don't even understand the system in which you are operating. You don't understand the government that you are representing. It's tragic. But that aside, Donald Trump is a threat to it all, according to him. He says, you think you don't have anything at stake, you're not going to do very well. Well, we did very well under Donald Trump's first presidency. I'm not going to do well. Well, he probably is not doing well, period, because the man is a spiritual and mental and emotional basket case as far as I'm concerned. He said, when the paddy wagon comes, and by the way, you know that phrase, that's kind of a racist throwback, which is really a disparaging reference to the Irish. That's where that comes from. But again, this man is just, he said, when the paddy wagon comes, you and I are going to be in the back of it, bouncing around, and it's not going to be very much fun. And they will tell you, the judge said, I'm sorry, Mr. Melbourne, I'm sorry, Mr. Carville. Trump said he was going to get rid of the Constitution. I have no choice but to enforce the democratic laws of this country. What? This is their closing argument. Mass hysteria. And they're constantly raising the question, what happens if Trump loses? What are his supporters going to do if he loses? Well, I can tell you what I'm going to do if he loses. I don't believe he's going to lose, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do if he loses. I'm going to continue to be the loyal opposition, and I'm going to continue to point out the wrongs of a rogue government with wicked people running it. And I'm going to continue to do the work that God has called me to do. I'm not going to pick up my AR-15 and go out in the streets and start trying to find people to kill or harm or hurt. And I know millions of Christians across this country feel the same way. We're going to continue to fight the good fight of faith. Now, we will defend ourselves, of course. I think we have a God-given as well as a constitutional right to do that. We'll defend ourselves against people who might come and say, well, you know what, we're going to come and basically we're going to unlawfully put you in prison. We're going to unlawfully take your property or whatever. We're going to take your life. And again, I don't expect it to get to that, but those are the circumstances under which we would be, according to the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, as far as I'm concerned, according to the God-given rights we've been given, we would be duty-bound to defend ourselves. Now, that's an entirely different matter. As you all know, I've said repeatedly, I'm not calling for that. I'm not expecting that. I'm not anticipating that. I don't want that. But I'm certainly not going to be involved in any precipitation of violence because the election didn't go the way I wanted to go, even if they stole it. Because the answer then is not to, the Bible says, do not resist evil with evil. So the answer to that then is to keep working on fixing a system that is so easily manipulated and so easily defrauded. That'll be harder to do if they steal this one, I'll tell you that. But that's what we have to do. All of this stuff they're saying about what's going to happen, as far as I'm concerned, they're projecting. Because they're the ones, I don't want to put anybody in jail other than criminals. I don't want to put James Carville in jail. I mean, the man's an idiot. You just let him talk the stupid stuff he's talking. And I don't want to put Kamala Harris or Tim Walz or anybody else in jail or see them hurt or harmed. I've said that repeatedly. I don't see anybody hurt or harmed. I want to defeat these people on the high plane of moral excellence. Not in the dregs and depravity of viciousness and wickedness and violence and hatred and bitterness and all of that. That's no. But everything they're saying about what Donald Trump and his supporters want is really what they want. But this is their strategy, mass hysteria. Now, if you stoke up this mass hysteria, and then the election doesn't go their way? Who? And in effect, you've told people, we will have elected Hitler to office. What do you ask? I mean, folks, you know, the Bible refers to, in the Old King James, it refers to the mystery of iniquity. And I really believe that phrase means you cannot plumb the depths of human wickedness. You can't really understand it. Those of us who are normal and those of us who have a conscience, those of us who our posture is we love God, we love people, we can't really understand it. You can't wrap your head around it other than to know it's demonic, it's satanically inspired, but you still don't understand how people can allow themselves to stoop to the levels to which they stoop. But that's the mystery of iniquity. That's the inscrutability of depravity and degeneracy and sin. And I think that's why the Bible says in Proverbs 14:34, righteousness exalts a nation and sin is a reproach to any people. Because righteousness elevates, sin denigrates. And this is ultimately what this election is all about. It is about whether America is going to be a nation of reproach or an exalted nation. A nation that elevates people or a nation that drags people into sin and depravity and degeneracy. And I think it's quite obvious which way Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will lead us. I'm sure all of you are familiar now with the cry at a Kamala Harris rally. And I don't know who said this. I wish we could find out who actually said it. And because maybe the person who said it is a supporter, but thought that it was an appropriate thing to say because that person didn't understand that Kamala Harris and that group that follows her, they hate Jesus. But somebody cried out, Jesus is Lord. And Kamala Harris says, you're in the wrong rally. You need to go to the smaller one down the street. And of course, Donald Trump's rallies are never smaller than Kamala Harris's. They're always much, much bigger by several orders of magnitude. But the blasphemy, the disrespect. So she had two options. She could have ignored it, but she could have turned it and said, I agree, Jesus is Lord. He's Lord over the poor. He's Lord over the weak. He's Lord over the sick. And he wants us to take care of it. I mean, she could have spinned it, but no. You're in the wrong rally. Well, of course, Jesus doesn't belong in a rally where you've got Megan Thee Stallion spewing all kinds of filth and nastiness and where people are praising and exalting killing unborn babies. And then where you got these guys with blonde wigs trying to be women prancing around and look, Jesus is not Lord over all that, that's for sure. So she was right. Jesus is not Lord, and a person who thinks that believes, knows that Jesus is Lord, doesn't belong in a Kamala Harris rally. Because Jesus is not welcome there. So, look, we are down to the wire. Even Donald Trump, with his turn of the phrase, calls him Gavin New Scum. But you know, I'll tell you, Trump is something else. But Governor Gavin Newsom said in an interview, it is not an overstatement to call Donald Trump a fascist. And believe it or not, he was being interviewed by a former press secretary for President Biden, what was the woman's name? She left and KJP took over, but she was interviewing him on Sundays, MSNBC, the Marxist Socialist No Brains channels inside, and he said, he says a lot of things about Donald Trump, but he also said, it is not an overstatement to call Donald Trump a fascist. He said, I know it's a loaded word, but when you say you're going to be dictator on day one, I mean, look up the definition of fascism, the characteristics of a dictator, and authoritarian. Well, now you ask me, what was more authoritarian than what Newsom did? I'm going to say it myself now, what Gavin Newsom did during COVID, trying to shut down churches. I mean, he's been sued and had to pay some of these churches, trying to shut down churches, trying to punish Christians for worshiping, while he goes off to parties, $300 a plate, no mask, no nothing, and is having a good time boogalooing with his political buddies. But everybody else is being told, no, shut down, lock down, no church, we're going to punish you if you do it. And he's got the nerve to point the finger at Donald Trump and say he's authoritarian. I mean, the hypocrisy of these people knows no bounds. Really, it's just amazing to me. So Donald Trump's a fascist, and look, Donald Trump is capable of saying some dumb things, okay? Because he's funny and he likes to joke. It's just say, there's no need in complaining about it. That's him. And there are going to be things he will say that you and I will say, oh, boy, why did he have to say that? So when he said, I'm only going to be dictator for one day, of course, you know what he was doing? He was, excuse me, he was really poking the bear. He was poking at the liberals because he was just messing with them. Donald Trump has no aspirations to be a dictator. I mean, it's a joke. But of course, they trot that out and say, well, he said it. He said on day one. That's not what he said. And it was a joke. He said, for only one day, only one day. And I think he was referring there to dealing with illegal immigration, if I'm not mistaken. But I think there was a specific issue he was talking about that he was going to address on day one. But look, here's the other thing that really bothers me about this. When they say these things, they're calling me and you and anybody else who voted for Donald Trump a complete dunce, that we're somehow misled. We're just like the Nazis who just followed Hitler blindly over the cliff and into mass murder and all of that. I mean, and frankly, folks, it's personally insulting to me. It really is. It's personally insulting to me. Because as a Christian, one of the people I most abhor in life who's ever lived is Adolf Hitler. The man tried to annihilate the Jewish people. He tried to turn the whole world into his own slave plantation. There have been few characters in human history that match the level of evil that Adolf Hitler pushed, forced, dragged the world into. And the idea that you and I would support someone who has that same mindset or the same kinds of ideas or ambitions or can be likened to him in any way is an insult to all of us. I've said it before. Let me say it one more time, and I'm going to get ready to break from the program today, and I'll be back again tomorrow with a shortened version, because for the next 3 days I'll be on American Family Radio. But again, you can tune into American Family Radio at 9 a.m. I will be back on guest hosting for Jeff Shreve. Donald Trump loves America. He loves the American people. He loves and honors the Constitution of the United States. And Donald Trump, in my view, probably second tier, because I wouldn't put him in with George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, because they were facing entirely different circumstances. But I really believe that Donald Trump is going to go down in history as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. I would certainly put Donald Trump up there with Ronald Reagan and with some others, and I won't go into naming them, but Donald Trump is going to win the presidency, in my view, and when his term is over, he is going to go off into the sunset, and we will either have J.D. Vance or someone else who will step into that role as president. I'm not going to determine yet whether I would be a supporter of J.D. Vance or someone else who might arise, but it would be my hope that someone would arise with the same constitutional and conservative principles and values who would help lead the country out of the mess that the leftists, the Marxists, the socialists, the Democrats have tried to take us into. And they've gone a long way toward it, because these people have really done tremendous damage to American culture. Tremendous damage. So, folks, if you haven't voted yet, get out there and vote. As I've said before, don't just vote. Work those polls. If it's too late now, probably to sign up as an official poll watcher or part of your county or your city or your state election official board or something like that. But we ought to aspire to these roles so that we can keep an eye on things, because these people do not have the same moral compunctions that you and I have. You and I trust, would not cheat whether anybody was watching or not, because we know God is watching. But these people don't believe in God, and they don't believe in absolute morality, and they think that, again, the end justifies the means, and whatever they have to do in order to bring the country into this great utopia that they have planned for us, they should do. And that is moral, even if it involves lying, stealing, cheating, or getting Donald Trump assassinated. Yep, I said it. Because they're trotting out the same old tropes. And I've said, if Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler, if Donald Trump is Osama bin Laden, if Donald Trump is a dictator, if Donald Trump is going to overthrow the Constitution, what are you asking people to do? Well, we know what they're encouraging people to do, and it's a shame. It is thoroughly amoral, disgusting. It is. Folks, it is deeply depraved. It really is. But again, that's the mystery of iniquity, because these people don't even know what depravity is, because they have no moral definitions at all, other than to do what we want. Moral is to get our way. Immoral is to not get our way. That's their view. We know that true morality is to do things God's way. There is a way that seems right to man, but the ways thereof are the ways of death. We're going to win, folks. I'm predicting Donald Trump by 4 points, 52-48. Might do better than that. But in the meantime, I'm not taking anything for granted, and I hope you aren't either. So you can join me at 9 a.m. on American Family Radio. But in the meantime, stand up, step. Oh, by the way, at noontime, I will be on with Ken Blackwell, former ambassador to the UN and former Cincinnati mayor and Secretary of State for Ohio, who is an election expert, and we will be talking about the election and about maintaining the integrity of the election so that the outcome is indeed the one that the American people have voted for, not one that the leftists have defrauded us out of. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.